Hi, my name is Nikki Robb. I am co-coordinator of the Festival of Remembrance here in Missoula, Montana.
And my name is Tarn Ream. And I'm also a co-coordinator, that's a big word, co-coordinator of the Missoula Festival of Remembrance in Missoula.
And the festival has been taking place here in Missoula. We are in our 27th year, so it's a long-standing festival. And Tarn, why don't you tell us a little bit about how it got started and what it means?
A couple of Missoula artists were interested in having more conversations around death and dying and the process of grief. And of course, they're artists, so they feel like it's important to use art as a vehicle for catharsis or a way to start conversations around that difficult process.
Yeah, and so over the years, there have been many kind of transitions in who runs the festival and the focus of the festival and things we're trying to highlight. These days, we are doing a really good job of highlighting multiple cultures and how they deal with death, grief, loss, and how they have those conversations around that, traditions different cultures use, and trying to educate the public and give them opportunities to have a free, open space where we can talk about this.
Yeah, as well as engaging in art projects so that people can actually physically move through grief. And that's been a major part. So we have certain things like we've been doing this community shrine where people can come and add notes of remembrance or mementos for lost loved ones. Things like that we really feel are important to engage the community, as well as panel discussions, movies with opportunities for discussions after the movie, that sort of thing that really also continues the conversation around death and dying. And also, I think loss is another piece of that. I think, sometimes we think about death and dying solely, but that loss is a huge piece of a lot of different. So people actually have come to the procession, which is the culmination of the event always on November 2nd. And they've come to show not only about somebody that they've lost or a pet that they've lost, but also about their feelings about loss in other ways. So, for example, climate change or the loss of certain things around them in the environment or in their community, and I think that's really poignant. So it's also a way for people to move through grief for other things as well.
Yeah, and we still definitely have the art piece. I just want to make sure that people understand, although we have plenty of educational opportunities and great discussions around these topics, we also have art pieces at most of our events for the lead up month of October. So we always encourage people to bring young ones and be part of these conversations, because if we don't share these stories with our youth and these traditions with our youth, then we won't have any traditions someday. So it's really important to share these stories, share our traditions, share our cultural heritage around dealing with these pieces, and being open to conversation.
My name's Erin Austin. I'm the Assistant Director at Tamarack Grief Resource Center. We are a nonprofit here in Missoula working in all of western Montana. Our mission is to strengthen and honor individuals, families, and communities throughout their journey with grief, and we do that in a number of ways. We have offices here in Missoula and in Kalispell and in Browning, and like I said, work with individuals and families and communities in all of those places across western Montana. We provide counseling resources, so we have a number of trained therapists on staff who work with folks in an intimate setting, one-on-one, couples, families. And we have a large team working on program support as well. So we provide camps and retreats, bereavement camps and retreats across the state for kids, for families, for women, for men, for teens, and we're outside as much as we can be. So we're a really nature-based program. We believe that celebrating the lives of those we have loved who have died is just as important as the way that they continue to influence us and the way that we move through the world. Often, I think we can focus a lot on how someone died when we talk about death in our culture, and at Tamarack, we work to celebrate the lives that they lived while they were here on Earth, and think about how they've influenced us and how we will choose to live our lives after loss. We believe that grief is a natural response to loss. We all grieve in our own unique ways, and so our programs blend creative and narrative and physical and spiritual ways to process emotion and move through grief and have different outlets for what comes up for each of us in this process. In addition to the camps and retreats, we provide a number of resources here in the community and community-based workshops. So we have support groups for kids and for adults. We do educational events in the form of annual Grief Institute training for professionals across the state. We believe deeply in expanding our network of care and thinking about how we talk about death and how we approach death and grief and hope and healing across our state. So through educational opportunities, we're hoping to strengthen our network of care. Tamarack Grief Resource Center has been involved with the Festival of Remembrance for a number of years. We believe it's a beautiful way to integrate different cultural understandings of deaths and celebration of life, and does honor the lives that others lived and gives us an opportunity to bring the mourning with this sense of vitality together. And so much of grief can be exploring those kinds of dualistic emotions in the same moment, and the procession in the festival gives us a really beautiful space to do that. So Tamarack has walked in the procession for many years, and we invite everyone to join us. We have painted our faces for many years, and we bring flowers to the procession to distribute in honor and remembrance of those who we have loved who are no longer with us, and find it to be a really meaningful way to engage with our Missoula community here.
My name's Kaylee. I'm going to be talking about my dad today. His name was Randy, and I think I'm going to talk about a funny story. So when we were younger, we had this place over at the lake in Trout Creek, and for us, like when we were little, it was like a magical place that we would always go to, like every summer, like every weekend, every summer. And so we had never gone like real fishing before. We had a boat up there, and I'd never gone like real fishing. We had these like fake fishing poles that had like the fake rods that were just like plastic, and mine was like a Disney princess one. And so one morning we like really wanted to go fishing, like learn how to actually fish. So our dad, me, and my brother went fishing that morning. It was so early. I remember just eating like those little donuts, like those tiny ones that are not healthy at all, and packing onto the boat. And so we went fishing early in the morning, and we didn't catch anything because we didn't know how to fish at all. But my dad caught like, I want to say it was a big trout, and I didn't want to kill it or anything. And that's like foreshadowing me being vegetarian, because I didn't want to kill it. So we put it in a bucket just full of like water, and it just sat in there for hours, and we didn't catch anything else. And we head back to like our cabin, and it's still sitting in the bucket because our dad kept asking like, do you want to like eat it? Do you want to cook it? And I was like, no, I don't want to cook it. It's a fish, it's living. But I really wanted to fish for some reason. So it just sat in a bucket for, I want to say like 5 hours. And it was already dead at that point, but no one would tell me. So it was just sitting dead in this bucket. And it came to dinner time, and I was like finally ready, like, okay, I guess we can cook it. And everyone around me had to be like, it's been dead for hours. We're not cooking that. It's disgusting. And I think after that, I like never caught a fish again, never went fishing. But I was always like wanting to do everything that my dad wanted to like teach me. Like I always wanted him to teach me. He was, he worked at Tamararack, so I always wanted him to teach me like how cars work, how tires worked. I wanted to be just like him. And then when I was younger, I think my fondest memory of me and him together, although it sounds like kind of cringy, is we would watch the History Channel together, like How It's Made, Pawn Shop, like all those shows. And I would just be so fascinated, and he would be so fascinated. We would just sit there on a Sunday, like all afternoon, watching how it's made. And those are like my favorite memories, because I just wanted to be like him like so much. I was like always tomboyish. I just wanted to be like him so much, because he was like my hero, like the knight in shining armor. If I could say something to my dad right now, I would probably say, for one, I miss him a lot. I'm gonna get emotional. Yeah, I miss him a lot. I wish he was here for like all the memories I've already made, and like, for memories I'm gonna make, but I still think he's here. So I would say I miss him and that I love him.
My name is Jace, and I'm going to be talking about my dad. My dad was like a crazy man. He would always like just find stuff that needs to be fixed and fix it. He always wanted to like be helpful to others and make sure they got things done and help anyone that needs it. I guess he was just a good person. Everything that I kind of want to be with him, or as him, is a good person. Like, I want to help others. Before he passed, he was very, like, different, I feel like. He wasn't always himself, and that really affected me a lot. He was just always angry all the time, and I know it wasn't him in that, but it was just always kind of hard to see him that way. And I resented him for that. I hated him so much because he was just not someone I wanted to be anymore, and he was someone that I just didn't want to be around too. And like 3 years of me not wanting to be around him, and I feel so bad about that because now he's gone and I don't get that time back. I don't get any of that back, and it just makes me so sad to not be able to see him every day. And finally, and like when he was in the hospital, it was always so, I was just bawling my eyes out. I couldn't handle it because I was like, I'm here with you, but like I didn't feel like he was here with me because he was all like drugged, and the hospital was just trying to make him comfortable, but it was just so hard to see him in that state of like not focusing, not being himself, even though he wasn't himself much anymore anyway. It was just hard to see that like worsen and overnight. And leading up, he kept going to the hospital, and just seeing him kept going there, breaking his ribs, breaking his arm. It's just so hard to see that. But I'm happy that I went through that. I got to like understand how much pain like one can bear, I think. And like seeing someone you love like slowly like disintegrate over time, and just growing from the pain. I feel like I grieved while he was still here more than I ever did after he was gone. I just felt numb afterwards. I was like, he's finally gone. He's finally somewhere maybe that's better. You never know. He's just not here. And like sometimes I just wake up and I'm like, I don't want to go to school. Like, I don't want to wake up and not see him like kissing my mom or heading off to work. I guess just him being gone is just the hardest part of any of it. I guess one moment leading back to the beginning of him being a good person was like he would just find stuff, and I remember this one time he just found a ladder in the road and he brought it to the lake and he made it our new like dock ladder, and it was like the biggest like happiest moment of my life because it was so hard getting onto that dock out of the water. It was the hardest thing, and then like him finding this and like refurbishing it and making it a part of our lives was really cool. And he did that with a lot of things. Like he'd just find stuff and he'd like, how can I make this a part of my life? We have so much stuff that he was like, we can use that someday. And I think that was a really great moment of his, and I wish that I could be more like that. Think of like, how can I use this and not just throw it away? And if I could say one thing to him today, I guess it would be, I wish you could come to my wedding. Like, that is the biggest thing that I'm so sad to miss. I just want you to wake up and I'd be like with you. Or I guess I'd wake up and I'd be with you. Just one last time.
Hello, I'm Quincy, and today I'll be talking about a very good friend of mine, Julie Shepard, who committed suicide at age 17. She was the type of person who literally brightened up your day by her contagious smile and goofy personality. She was an insanely happy, caring, smart, and very talented person. She never showed it, but she was in a very dark place, very depressed, and she thought that her only way out was by taking her own life. We grew up together playing on the same softball teams and sharing the same group of friends, which I was very fortunate to be able to have shared so many memories with her, such as going out and having dinner, taking pictures together, having sleepovers, traveling for softball, going on late night drives, etc. I always did know that she was depressed, but never enough to where she would take her own life. The very last thing I said to her was, "That dress looks so good on you," as we passed one another in the halls at school. Little did I know, she went home about an hour after that and shot herself in the head. That was the last thing I got to say to her and the last time I'll ever get to see her. But if she was here, I would tell her endlessly how much I love her, why so many people loved her, and how many people loved her.
So, my name is Elizabeth, and I am from Austria. I'm 26 years old, and I'm going to talk about my grandfather and my relationship with my grandfather. He died when I was around 14 years old. And I basically spent my whole childhood with him. I basically grew up at my grandfather's place. After my mother died, I spent my whole childhood there. And I remember him as like the person who keeps the family together. He was like called El Patron by my father. That was his kind of nickname. And he always had this special seat in his house, like at the big table. He would always sit at the head of the table, and then the family around, and everybody would come to his place together and to eat together and to celebrate together. And when he fell sick, I pretty much like knew kind of that this is the end. And he got a call from the doctor to go to the hospital, and he was diagnosed with what is it called? It was a type of cancer, and I think within a year from that moment on, he got really bad. His overall health and he got really skinny. He couldn't eat anymore. And then the day he died, when I wanted to go to the hospital, I got a call from my dad telling me that I should not go there anymore because he already had died. So yeah, that's basically all I remember. If I could say something to him right now, I would, I guess, thank him for taking care of me and my sister, and also for being kind of a role model and somebody I could look up to.
Hi, so my daughter was Feather Love Grassy Water, and she was born on May 11th, 1994 at 7:22 a.m. She lived until shortly after midnight on April 21st, 2012. She died in a car accident. She got bumped along the highway outside of Lethbridge, Alberta. Feather was a very unique child. She was a sweet baby. Okay, so she went to nursery and kindergarten in Calgary at a Cree school and learned how to count to 10 in Cree. And then we moved back to the reserve in southern Alberta, and she learned how to count to 10 in Blackfoot. So she came home one day and told me, "Mom, I learned how to count to 10 in Blackfoot. Do you want to hear me?" I said, "Yes, sure." So she goes and counts to 3 in Blackfoot and 4 to 6 in Cree in the same breath. And it was funny, and I was laughing at her, and she didn't realize what she was doing. So from there, we moved to Polson, Montana, and spent 18 years in the Flathead. Well, I have. But that's where she spent the rest of her life. And we moved to Missoula at the time of her death. We lived there for 2 years by then. We always went back to Canada to visit our family and friends, and she was really close with her nephew on her dad's side. And he's the one who took her out the night she died. So anyway, her elementary years were spent in Pablo, Montana, from grade 2 to 5. And the teachers there were just amazing. They were very kind, they really care for their students, and they went out of their way to accommodate all the students. So Feather really enjoyed her childhood. She was a very bright child, always laughing, telling stories, and Jesus lived in her heart, and she told her friends about him. And her teachers would tell me how she lit up the room when she walked in, and she was always laughing and just a real good spirit. And I was very proud of her. She was very respectable and polite and a good girl. She stayed home. She didn't try and go out with some of her friends that did. But when we went back home to Canada, that's where her friends would take her out. Our family. That's where they took her out one night and she never came home. So the family that took her nephew, he was 2 weeks older than her, or 3. He just turned 18, and he was with his 3 other family members. And there was 2 girls that were Feather's friends. They were also 17 from another family. They took her to Lethbridge to a party, and she fell asleep in the back of the van. It was a 7-seater van. And they were leaving the city at 11 o'clock when the police pulled them over and told them they had to all walk away and leave the van there. So her nephew said he heard her footsteps and knew she was with them. And then he turned around and she was gone. But I don't believe him. I could tell that it wasn't true when he was telling me. So her death remained a mystery until 2016, when her 2 friends that were with her that night told the truth of what really happened. They said that the oldest woman that was in the crowd, which is part of his family, got into a physical fight with her and threw her over the bridge. And I don't know, to this day it remains a mystery. Whatever happened to the rest of them? Where did they go? In my mind, I think they all ran away and got scared. I don't know. But I would like closure to this, and I've asked the RCMP and the Lethbridge City Police to do an investigation, and they won't. I've been bothering them, and they just take it for granted. They don't seem, it's not important to them. So just recently I've threatened to bring it to the media, but I haven't done that yet. It still remains a mystery what really happened that night. But all we know in the newspapers said is that she was sitting or on the side of the highway, but a motorist that passed by, a witness, actually told me that they seen something sitting on the side of the highway. And the person that hit her was using his cell phone, and he didn't get any time for killing my daughter. He claims he didn't know what he hit. So that's the story of my daughter Feather and how she passed away. And people loved her from everywhere. Like strangers would come up to us as we're shopping and be happy to see her. People would run across the street just to give her a hug, and everybody's eyes lit up and Feather, oh Feather, and they'll start laughing and talking. She was just such a beautiful girl. And it's really true that we don't know what we got until it's gone. If I could live my life over with her, I would treat her a lot better. And I would do a lot more with her, and I wouldn't let her do a lot. If I had to say one more thing to her, I guess it would be that I'll see you again in heaven and we will spend eternity together.